So, good morning, Victor. Today we are happy to have this interview with you on the occasion of your new book release. And that book is titled Goan-ness Unbound Exploring Decolonial Abundance. Now, it seems quite interesting title. Would you like to explain to the viewers what do you mean by these words, unbound, Goan-ness, and also the abundance? You can give a brief idea, then we will take up some of this reflection in the line of the content that you have written in the book.
Yeah, thank you, Nishant, for taking up the interview for this new book that I have written. It's about my own identity as a Goan, and we people in Goa have a culture which we call Goan-ness. Now, this Goan-ness was born at with the encounter of the colonizer. And so, while the colonizer colonized, Goans Goanized and became Goans. And so, if there was no colonization, we might have been something else. But what has happened to us under colonization is interesting, and that's why that this is Goan-ness. Another important thing that I wanted to bring out is I'm trying to explore and unlock this Goan-ness. At the same time, play with the word unbound, which means it cannot be simply defined. It cannot be closed by boundaries. So Goan-ness is always unbound. No one has monopoly and right to define what it is, and it is always in the coming. It is always in the making, and Goan-ness has a beautiful present and a future. And so, in this sense, the dynamism of Goan-ness and the exploring decoloniality is very important for me to look at it from the decolonial theories, which might enlighten us to understand Goan-ness, but it takes us into a different orientation, because most decolonial theories look for the lost past. What has happened under colonization is damaging, and therefore we must recover what this time pure past that was lost. And so the present and the future becomes a loss recovery dynamism through which people want to recover what has been lost by colonizers. And so this is what I need to talk to you about decoloniality, and I call it abundance because it remains more in the future, unclosed. I would like to call it enclosed. In a sense, the boundaries are there, but yet not there. And so, in the process of becoming and making, Goan-ness is growing and embracing all Goans and Goa.
Thank you, Victor, for that nice explanation of the title itself. But when you were explaining to me about this idea of Goan-ness, you said the Goan-ness is born with the encounter with the colonizers. Now, that reminds me of Homi Bhabha, who speaks about hybridization or hybridity. Now,
Yes.
to what extent Goan-ness is also a mimicry of that hybridization which Homi Bhabha speaks? Of course, you speak about in that book. Could you explain that to your viewers, how you see the relation between the Goan-ness as you see it and the idea of hybridization of hybridity, which Homi Bhabha elaborates?
Yeah, Homi Bhabha has been one of the important theorists whom I tried to study and analyze Goan-ness with his ideas like mimesis. Mimesis, if you notice, there is a lot of connections and sameness. I would not call it sameness, but there is a link between Goan-ness and the Western Lusophonian way of being in the world. And so, in many ways, Goan have imitated the colonizer, and yet looking at it from Homi Bhabha's point of view of hybridization, this imitation is never really imitating the colonizer. It is hybridizing the experience that the Goans get in front of the colonizer and colonial metrics of power. And given this metrics of power, Goan-ness is created in a third space. So, we in Goa do not have this binary of the colonizer and the colonized, which comes post colonially very strongly. But when Goan culture was being formed and Goan-ness was formed, it it was created vis-a-vis contemporary contemporaneously with the colonizer. And so, therefore, I see it as resistance, as hybridized way of being different and not same.
That's quite interesting because you are saying that mimesis is not merely mimicking or imitating the colonizer as such, but there is also a resistance to it. So it is in that there is a third space, this hybridization that creates this Goan-ness. That's quite interesting. In that sense, of course, you also mentioned about it. There is some difference the way you look at decoloniality, because you have Sai Deepak, for example, would think of decoloniality of retrieving the lost past, but then you seem to be moving in another direction. It's not so much the lost past, but something living in the present, but also seeking for the lost future. There is a forward movement. There is a pragmatics of forward leap. Would you like to explain to us what exactly is this pragmatics of this forward leap?
Yeah, I completely reject Shai Deepak's decoloniality because it is going back and trying to look for the lost past and give a future and present to that lost past. Now, Goan-ness certainly does not have this backward bend. Goan-ness is a forward thrust, and in my way of looking at it, and even all Goans simply look for present, and for that reason, this theory, which making a future, not recovering something that is lost, we don't have anything to lose also, because Goan-ness was born during the colonizer and colonization, and within that range of things, there is not really I mean, we suffered, we had a lot of problems with the colonizer, but our way of living and being in the world, we took our agency in our hands and created a present and tried to give a future to this present which we created. Now it has a past of its own, because Goan-ness is now more than, uh, let's say, 500 years old from the time of colonization. And so it does have its own past, but the past is never seen as one lost. What we see unfolding in front of us is the future. We are worried that our numbers will be less. There's a demographic anxiety because of many reasons of migration and other issues. There is also, going on the street, fighting battles. Enough is enough is an interesting movement that has started very recently. And so it is all about a future. It's not like Shai Deepak, who tries to glorify past and then tell us something we have lost. We have become victims and victims of the colonizer. And therefore, we have to now rebel, try to recover. But that kind of an philosophy and decoloniality cannot be Goan, because Goan always are not, never were victims of colonization. They created a way of being in the world in which we all call it Goan-ness. And so now, while the colonizer colonized us, we created our lives, and we are in the world. And this is the beauty of Goan-ness, that Goan-ness is not a return to some glorified, romanticized past.
That's great, Victor, because what you are saying is the Goan-ness is a deliberate process of making oneself. But it is also a kind of the process is also in some way it integrates the colonial processes and experiences, and therefore it is from that you have to leap forward and not just leap backward and lament things as if lost. And this is also very similar to the creative adaptation, of which the famous Olufemi Otaiwo in his book Against Decolonization speaks of. So I'm sure that you are inspired by this Nigerian thinker. Would you like to see how the Goan-ness, as you see it, from the decoloniality point of view, aligns well with Taiwo's understanding of against decolonization?
In fact, Taiwo has inspired me while I write this book, because he also thinks return to the past, a decoloniality of this time, which glorifies, romanticizes past and tries to go back to recover it, and in fact waste the present and the future on this project of recovery of a lost past. He disregards it and rejects such a decoloniality. That's why his book is against decolonization. And this kind of decolonization in contemporary days, he rejects. He doesn't reject decolonization, which is, let's say, in the beginning, people were aspiring to become independent countries. That is decolonization one. And there is decolonization two. Decolonization two is what we do post-colonially. And with post-colonially, we are looking at everything, from the law of the father, to put it in psychoanalytic terms. There is some original loss. There is something original which we need to gain. And so this law of the father tries to control everything that we do. And we actually audipolize. And this kind of, let's say, decoloniality is rejected by Taiwo. And Goan-ness is one important instance of leaving this rejection.
Great. Now that reminds me of the question of abundance. You already began speaking about the question of loss, but then the opposite of that is the abundance you speak about in the subtitle, exploring the decolonial abundance.
Yes.
This is an interesting idea, this abundance, because it reminds me of the excess which Georges Bataille, the famous French thinker, speaks about. Now, in what way this abundance is an excess, and how it is exactly antithetical to the question of loss which you are talking about?
Yeah, for that, I need to return to Georges Bataille. Certainly, I was interested, and I'm interested in Georges Bataille because we all of us experience excess. Goa is a place of excess. People want to do something more, surplus. They come for tourism here, and they do transgress their routine and do something more. And so this is a land of excess for others as well as for us. And I wanted to understand it in the light of thinkers who dealt with excess. Because today also we are having information overload. How do we deal with this surplus? And so in that thinking, I find Georges Bataille very, very inspiring. And he dealt with that excess and let us live with it. So that is the important part of it. As well as, to come to this point, I thought perhaps we'll do with Derrida's ideas around, when he deals with excess itself, excess meaning, he is also inspired by Bataille. But the first thing Derrida doesn't accept is the law of the market or the order of the market. So what happens is the order of the market is I give you something in order that I will get something. So I go to the market, I give 100 rupees and I get something worth 100 rupees. So it's very calculative, and life is calculable in many ways, and it ends up in let's say calculus. we belong to this calculus, and then we live our life by that. So that is one problem I sort of first want to identify in order to understand abundance. There's another thing that we are also from Lacan's position. The Lacan's position is about loss. Now I am ready to lose something as long as my enemy, my neighbor, loses better, and so loses more. And I found Zizek giving an interesting example in order to understand this, how we live with a calculus of loss, and we are willing to do with our lives while my neighbor or my enemy or whoever suffers more. And so, anyway, this is very real to life. But to get to this point, perhaps I will give the example that Zizek himself gives. So Zizek says, in a dream, God tells someone, I will give you whatever you ask. You can ask me anything, and I'm giving it. But there is one condition. I will give double what you have asked me to your neighbor. And so what happens, as you know, you are smiling, you know about it. The thing is, the one who was promised, he says, God, take away one of my eyes. And he wanted his neighbor to be blind. And so you see, he is ready to lose one eye, provided his neighbor becomes blind. And so this is the calculus of loss. Again, is a calculation, and people do calculate and are thinking that they can live with certain loss as long as the enemy or the otherized other suffers more. Now, this is not the order of abundance. Order of abundance also is there in Derrida in a sense of, undecidable, unclosed, everything is in the coming, a difference, difference as we say it, the delayed coming of meaning. And so inexhaustibility of life and what we make of it. So in that sense, what I am trying to look at Goan-ness in abundance is because, we don't really have any fight with time. We don't really compete with time. We don't race against time. We are called sossegado people, as sossegado, content, laid back, very confident, happy, calm. And so this, being in time and the way of being with time is very, very central to abundance. And I see God also doing it, giving, whether he gets anything from us. Nature is at best explaining this abundance. I live, as you know, on the bank of a river, but the river doesn't look at my face to give fish. The river keeps giving and giving and giving. And so there is no market law that is operative in abundance. And so in that sense, I am exploring this particularly forward-looking abundance, which can bring, healing therapy to us and also to others who come to Goa.
It's very interesting perspective that you offered in terms of the Goan-ness understood as an abundance, but connecting it with the question of Sushegadu, meaning to say that we are content with what we have, and therefore we are also able to be generous, exceed the order of the calculable. And I think that's one of the greatest things that Goan-ness can offer to the rest of the Indians and to the world. And to end this discussion, probably we could look at how you see this decoloniality of Goa different from the rest of the narratives of decoloniality in India. In what way it is unique? I also think that there is no one way of being Goan. There is a multiplicity of being Goan, the plurality of Goan-ness, and from that point of view, how this decoloniality of Goa is unique and different from the other.
Yeah, as you said, the important part of us is there is no one way of being Goan. There are multiple ways of being Goans in Goa and also outside. Goans can go outside and Goa comes with them. And Goan-ness also comes with them. And so in that sense, there are many Goan-nesses. At the same time, what difference that Goan-ness as a decolonial experience and decolonial way of being in the world has to offer to India as well as to the world is, colonizers have done what they have done everywhere. And then again, I cannot say there is one kind of colonization. The Portuguese colonization is completely different from British colonization or French colonization, which we all experienced in India. So I cannot claim that there is one form of colonization. Again, there are different types of colonizations and different ways people have responded. The Goan therapeutic way is important because we did not accept victimhood. Goan-ness produced a way of being in the world while colonizer was with us. And therefore, it's a very different thinking that we can be crushed, we can be victimized, we are losers, the losers of history. The losers of history are actually those, we are not losers of history. What I'm trying to tell you, we are not losers of history. We have made our lives. That's where, our battle, we have no battle with time. We have really no battle with whatever happened to us over time. And so what I'm trying to make Goan-ness's effective contribution to India and to the world. If you look at Hindutva, there's an echo of loss. And therefore, there is a dynamism recovery. There's lamentation. We are victims of the past. Somebody came and crushed us. Somebody came and did wrong to us. Okay, we can also be that. There is another decolonial option, is the way we Goans reacted. We imitated what we want from the Westerner. We took what we want from we were very pragmatic, adaptive, creative, and that is how we created our Goan-ness. And therefore, we are not victims we are not losers of the history of the past. We are makers of our history. We make our own destiny. And that's our important lessons for India as well as for the world. Because even Walter Mignolo seemed to return to a romanticized primeval past in his decolonial writings about what happened to Argentina and South America with the colonizers. So I think Goan-ness has something beautiful to offer to the world. This was the insight that captivated me to write this book. That this, not victims, not losers of the past, but those who are able to adapt, creatively embrace, and move forward. This is what made me, to articulate it in this book so that it reaches that beyond Goa, make Goa also introspect, self-conscious of what we have achieved over this long period of time, and try to heal the world of, the wounds. There's a way of being in the world when wounds happen, and yet we can seek therapy, and we ourselves can take responsibility for our life and move forward rather than blame someone else who did something in the past, and now lose our present by recovering what has been lost. And so the best way is to move forward, embrace everyone, go with what comes in life. And so that is our beauty of Goan-ness. And it blends beautifully with our tourism. There's a welcome that comes along with Goan-ness. Welcome to everyone. And that's welcome to our past events that we have seen it, and let them be. And letting things be and moving ahead is the way of being Goan in the world.
It's very interesting because Goan-ness, as you see it, is not an echo of loss, but an echo of excess. I think with that optimistic note, we shall end this interview. And thank you for your time. And thank you for this wonderful book. Thank you for letting others discover this meaningful Goan-ness Unbound. Thank you, Victor.
Thank you. God bless you.